Welcome to your weekly astrological weather. This is your place to get practical guidance for not only surviving, but thriving with the cosmic tides. Well, hello everybody, and welcome to your weekly astrological weather. My name's Amanda Poole Walsh. I'm the founder of Astrology Hub, and I am here with one of Astrology Hub's favorite astrologers, Christopher Renstrom, and we actually have like a double dose of Christopher this week, which is great. For those of you who subscribe to the Horoscope highlights, you probably already received or watched his video for this week, but now we get to have him for the entire, like going through all the major aspects of the week, which is just a treat. So thank you, Christopher.
Oh, thank you. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for having me on. I always love it. I always enjoy it.
So much fun. All right. So if we're going to like zoom out real quick and look at the big picture theme, what would you say is the theme for the week?
Well, you can't miss it. It's the Jupiter Neptune conjunction on April 12th. That's the biggest. That's the biggest statement. And I think that what we have to keep in mind is that it's not just like exclusive to the week. It's when it comes together, and it comes together this week. And when you're, of course, dealing with a slower moving planet like Neptune, you've been feeling the build up to this point. So you can almost think of it as a cresting wave. And so it crests this week.
If you had to describe Jupiter Neptune in Pisces in a few words, what would you say that it's all about? Like, what's this energy all about?
Dreams. It's all about dreams and the power of dream, and really the interpretation of dreams. We often think of dreams in terms of like hopes and wishes, and there's the kind of dream which is, I dream of being this one day, or I dream of doing this one day. It can be aspirational types of dreams. But the dream that I sort of wanted to talk about a little bit, if I could, and is the power of dream and the power of dream interpretation, and how in ancient times the divinity spoke to you through dreams. Nowadays we think of it more in terms of psychology. Like I had this dream last night, and I'm going to interpret this, and I'm going to understand it either in a psychological context or a psychic context, or a spiritual, psychological or psychic kind of context. It's geared towards like our health and our mental health or psychological health and understanding ourselves. But in ancient times, you spoke, or the divine could speak to you directly through dreams. And so this is actually the first one-on-one contact with the divine. Okay. And particularly in religion, there is this idea that God could speak to you through dream, and it wasn't going to be through scripture. It wasn't going to be through ritual. It wasn't going to be through doctrine, but it was the idea that God could speak to you, particularly, no matter your rank or place in society, through your dreams. And this was seen as being a very special thing. The way that it relates to Pisces, on one hand, it's Neptune and the collective dreaming. I mean, Neptune is the planet of collective dreaming, the collective imagination. How our entire world dreams is Neptune. Okay. But there was also a very curious relationship between the zodiac signs of Pisces and Sagittarius when it came to religion. Sagittarius was always associated with Orthodox religion, the institution of religion, as it appeared in its churches or synagogues or temples or whatever have you. Okay, but Pisces was the realm of the mystic. This was the person who was outside the Orthodox religion. Okay, and so Pisces really spoke to people who were filled with divine inspiration, to speak forward of what their experience was of God. And some people would refer to these people as mad people or crazy people. And some people would be like, he or she has experienced God in a vision or an hallucination. Shh, shh, shh. We must listen to them. They have a purer connection to God and the divine than our church people do. We must listen to this mystic. So there's always been this kind of tension between Sagittarius and Pisces, because Sagittarius was really God as God appears in this world. And, like in nature, for instance. And then Pisces was God as God appeared in the world beyond this world, the invisible world, the world that was hard to explain, that people said was crazy or mad or irrational. Well, that was the realm of Pisces. And so this is where this conjunction, Jupiter rules Sagittarius, Jupiter rules Pisces, and it's conjoining Neptune, which is the modern ruler of Pisces. So this, at the very least, I'm sure everyone's having very active dream lives right now, but that's at the very least. It's almost as if the world soul is rolling over in its sleep, is what's going on this week. And it's it's in this dream, it's in this reverie, and it's almost like it's sending it out through our nighttime dreams, our nighttime visions. So this is the thing that's very, very important, and really quite lovely, about this particular conjunction of planets in Pisces this week.
I love this distinction you're making between a more psychological analysis of a dream versus uh, like a spiritual download or like a direct discussion with the divine. And so how would we make that switch a little bit if this time is more about that, actual direct messages? And okay, a couple questions.
Yeah.
How do we, like, can you give us an example of how we might interpret things the way that a lot of us do now, psychologically versus more spiritually? And then two, are these always night dreams, or could they be like waking dreams where you're feeling like you're having ideas or visions as you're going throughout the day?
Right. Well, what I wanted to do, if I may, is actually share a story where
Yeah.
I think we could kind of get some instruction here.
Okay.
Okay.
Perfect.
But it also speaks a little bit more to Jupiter and the Jupiterian element in all of this as well. One of my favorite stories comes from Genesis, okay, in the Bible, the book of Genesis. And it's the story of Joseph and his brothers, okay. We all know it pretty much as the musical Joseph and his Technicolor Dreamcoat, or something along these lines. But Joseph is such a curious and remarkable figure. And I think Joseph is also a figure that we can sort of understand. In this story, in the Bible itself, you have a division between prophets and dream masters. They're called dream masters. Okay. Now, a prophet like Ezekiel, and they're usually kind of, I don't want to offend anyone, but they're usually kind of downer types. Okay, the prophets show up, and they take up a lot of real estate in the Old Testament. The prophets show up, and it's always about, you're doing this wrong. Okay, your society is koyanaskatsi, okay? It's world out of balance. You've lost your way with God. You're heading towards the road of damnation, and you got to get yourself right with God. And so it has this kind of like almost apocalyptic flavor. And if you look at today's headlines, there's a lot of that's going on, right? It's just like, this is what's happening to the world right now. It's happening because you've lost your faith, or if you've lost your place with God, and you have to get right with God. And so there's a lot of scare tactics that are being used. And you have prophets showing up in all sorts of circles. They could be New Age circles, they could be religious circles, they could be on television, they could be on the news on a regular basis. It's like, dreary, horrible times, repent, or you're going to ruin everything. Okay, so that's kind of its own classification, when you look in the Bible. And it's a very, very strong tradition of that. It's one that even carries to this day. There's another classification that shows up in the Bible, and these are the dream masters. Okay, these are the people who are given the gift of interpreting dreams that come from God. All right. So it's not their job to scare you onto the right path or whatever. It's their job to interpret a dream that cannot be interpreted by the person who is in charge. Okay. The most famous one, obviously, is going to be Joseph, but someone else who's almost as famous as Joseph is Daniel. Okay, who is, again, the only person who can interpret the dream of the king. Okay, and we even have showing up with the three wise men, God speaking to them in their dreams. And so, they're told not to go back the way that they had come when they had first encountered Herod. So these are these kind of like extraordinary examples of the divine speaking to the person, speaking directly to the person who's not a particularly, sanctified or whatever person. And I think that this is very important, just almost like this idea itself, the idea of interpretation. Okay, being able to interpret the dream that you have. And it can be a sleeping dream, but it can also be a waking dream. Daniel literally, we get the phrase, read the writing on the wall. Okay, that literally comes from Daniel. Okay, who is a dream master. He's able to interpret dreams. So a lot of what we're being sort of asked to do these days is to read the writing on the wall in terms of our own lives. We have plenty of people who are going to tell us what the writing is on the wall for everyone in the world and things like that. And it's during times like these when it's really important to not get lost in the oceanic dream of Neptune. Okay, because we can get lost in all of that, and we can be turned upside down in its waves and drawn deeper and down in its currents. So I think it's very important for all of us to really become our own dream masters in terms of learning how to interpret, at least for ourselves, the signs of the times, of what is going on. And I think the other thing that's really important about that is to interpret it in a way that you may not know what the answer is, but it's in service of guiding your life. Okay, it's in service of guiding your life. Now, Joseph is the story of Joseph is a very curious story, and it's a very curious story, actually. I'll start with that. But you can hear you can see the Jupiterian motifs immediately, okay, in this story. Joseph, as a boy, he is the son of Jacob. You might remember Jacob. Jacob is another person who's had these extraordinary history with dreams. Jacob dreams of Jacob's ladder, okay, which is the angels descending up and down from heaven to earth and to earth to heaven again. Okay, so this is Joseph's father, is Jacob, who first has the vision of Jacob's ladder and wrestles with the angel. It's never really quite clear if he actually wrestled with an angel or if it was a dream of wrestling with an angel, but he wrestles with an angel, emerges with a dislocated hip, and he's renamed Israel. And this is the birth of Israel, is in the renaming of Jacob. Jacob has a number of sons. He's got like 12 sons, okay? And second to the youngest is Joseph. It's the son that he had in his old age, and it's the one that he treasures the most. Okay, so Joseph is clearly Jacob's favorite. And so Joseph, as a young boy, which is where we meet him, he's actually not a young boy. He's maybe about 9 or 10 or 11-ish, okay? He just is like this gifted child that his brothers are very jealous of. And what sort of adds to the jealousy is not only do they know that his father Jacob favors him, but Jacob has made him a multicolored tunic. It's actually referred to as an ornamented tunic, which is a robe, which is that he wears. And this shows, his brothers are out there working in the fields with sheep and things like this, and they're in like dusty, bo, tunics or whatever. They don't smell nice, and but Joseph has this ornamented tunic, and Joseph, in the innocence of his youth, says to his brothers once, and he often sort of like comes and visits them while they're working in the fields. Joseph's never working in the fields, but his brothers always are. And once he comes wearing his robe, and he says, I dreamed a dream. And this is a phrase you're going to hear on and on and on through this. I dreamed a dream. Everyone begins with the phrase, I dreamed a dream. And Joseph says, I dreamed a dream. And listen to this dream I dreamed. We were binding sheaves in the field. That means we were bundling wheat in the field. He says to his brothers, we were binding sheaves in the field. And look, my sheaf arose and actually stood up. And your sheaves drew round and bowed to it. Okay, so he says it really quite innocently. And his brothers are like, who the hell do you think you are? That's their reaction. They're kind of like, the prince, and one of them comes forward and says, well, what are you saying, that you're meant to reign over us? And Joseph's like, it's just a dream I had. He hasn't really put together like messenger and message, like not, like how he's kind of sounding, like, which is a bit, privileged. And so another day, a couple of weeks pass, and Joseph comes to them again wearing his ornamented tunic. And he says, look, I dreamed a dream again. And in it, someone said, look at the sun, look at the moon, and look at the 11 stars in heaven. The sun and moon and the 11 stars are bowing to me, to Joseph. And his brothers are like, God, you're just like this impossible, annoying pest, and so they're just kind of like, who the hell do you think you are, your favorite son, and all these sorts of things. And so it gets to a point, I think it's like on the third or fourth round, Joseph comes trundling on out to the field again, and he's wearing his multicolored tunic, and one of the brothers says, look at him, the dream master. And that's the first time the phrase, look at him, the dream master, is used in the Bible. And they said, look, here comes the dream master. And so they're like, let's kill him. Okay, Genesis, the book of Genesis is a long book all about sibling rivalry. It begins with Cain and Abel, and it is resolved in the story of Joseph. But between Cain and Abel and Joseph, there are battling siblings in the fetus. There's Rebecca and Leah. There's nothing but nonstop battling sibling rivalry until at the end, it all comes to a culmination with the story of Joseph. So the brothers want to kill him, and actually do make to kill him. And one of the brothers, Reuben, says, no, don't kill him. Let's throw him down at the bottom of this well and sit on it and really think about what we want to do. And so they do. They strip the robe off of Joseph, and they throw him down into the bottom of the well. And there you can hear the Piscean imagery. It's because Pisces, with its relationship to the 12th house, is the house of slaves. It's the house of prisons. It's a sign and a house that's associated with having lost the things that you have. And here they take the robe off of him and they throw him down into the bottom of a dry well to think about what they're going to do with him. And there's a caravan of Ishmaelites that are walking past, and they decide, let's sell the little beep, to the Ishmaelites as a slave and get rid of him altogether. Okay, we haven't killed him, but he's out of our life too at the same time. So let's sell him to the Ishmaelites. And so they do. And Joseph, bound and naked, is taken down into the land of Egypt. And what the brothers do is that they kill a kid, which is a small lamb, and they take the blood and they spatter it on Joseph's tunic, and they take that tunic back to Jacob, and they show Jacob this tunic, and Jacob weeps because he has lost his favorite. And so we all think that's the end of Joseph. He's just this naked, bound kid being dragged off as a slave. That should be the end of the story. This is not the way that Jupiter works if you have Jupiter in your chart, okay? If you have Jupiter in your chart, let's say it's conjunct your midheaven. Let's say it's conjunct your sun or your moon, or it's in the rising sign position. Okay. Let's say Jupiter is in the sign that it is exalted in, which is the zodiac sign of Cancer, and it's well aspected. Well aspected meaning elevated in the chart or on one of the angles. Let's say you have Jupiter in its joy in the 11th house. Okay, that means Jupiter can be in any zodiac sign, but if it's in the 11th house, Jupiter is in its joy. It rejoices there. Okay, so if you have Jupiter very strong in your chart or very well represented, and certainly babies born this week are going to have an extraordinary, beautiful Jupiter in their charts. So this is out to everyone who's having babies this week. This is a really great time to do it. Jupiter becomes a sponsor. Jupiter becomes a guardian angel. Jupiter is a benefic. It brings good things, but Jupiter does more than that. It protects the life that it is in charge of. Okay, Jupiter protects the life that it is in charge of. When you think of Jupiter in our solar system, Jupiter is the largest planet in our solar system, right? It's the giant, and it's Jupiter that draws into its orbit all the asteroids, the space debris, the meteors, all these sorts of things, and they smash against the surface of Jupiter. If we didn't have Jupiter, I don't know. I imagine we would have ceased to exist as a planet a long time ago. We would have been hit by an asteroid or something, astray in space. But it's Jupiter, the giant planet, Jupiter, the guardian planet in astrology. It's Jupiter that fends off anything that's going to be malefic or hostile. And that's what it does in a chart when it's very strong. Jupiter will always show favor. Okay. And of course, if favor is shown to you, what can sometimes go hand in hand with that, if you don't manage it well, is envy. Okay. And clearly Joseph at this point in his career was not managing the favoritism well. But what happens is that Jupiter never gives up on those that Jupiter favors. But their rise in the world, if you have strong Jupiter in your chart, or you're a Sagittarius, Pisces, the way that you rise or progress in the world is not done through a to-do list. It's not done through trying to decipher what color your parachute may be. It's not done through, planning out your career and following your ambitions and things like this. People who are Pisces or Sagittarius or have strong Jupiter in their chart, a lot of times your journey in the world is a meandering one. Okay. And for many of them, it first begins with going down. All right. It first begins with going down. And so Joseph is thrown to the bottom of this pit. He's sold as a slave. He's taken into Egypt. This should be the end of that bratty Joseph. But no, it's only the beginning. Sort of going through the story, Joseph is always described, or there is this one section when he's bought by the Potiphar, Pharaoh's courtier. A Potiphar was a courtier, a high chamberlain. Okay, sort of think of it as a supervisor in a corporation. This is who the Potiphar is to Pharaoh. And Joseph is purchased by the Potiphar. And in Genesis, there's really only reference made to his looks, and they describe him as comely in features and comely to look at. What that basically means is Joseph is very beautiful. Okay, there's almost kind of like a feminine beauty to Joseph. He's very he's not like masculine workout at gym Joseph or anything like that, but he's very beautiful. His skin is very so there's this seductive flavor to Joseph's look that of course Joseph is totally unaware of. But anyway, the Potiphar's wife is not unaware of it. Okay, so the Potiphar brings the new slave home, throws a tunic on him and puts him in service to his wife, because Joseph's maybe only about 12 or 13. I don't know. You've noticed Joseph's getting a little older, but anyway, he's about 12, 13, tweeny Joseph. And so she finds him attractive. She's like, do you want to sleep with me? And he's like, no, I do not want to sleep with you. And she's like, come here, slave. And people in positions could do this. And even Ptolemy, in his book of astrology, talks about the charts of people who fall in love with slaves. So that was kind of like a type, or I guess it was like a thing that was going on in the ancient world, was doing the slave. But anyway, so she's like, come here, obey me. And he's like, no, no. And so he races from her, and she grabs his tunic, and he's naked again. This is the second time we've got naked Joseph, and he's running through the house, and he runs into the outside, and she calls out, that he tried to seduce her, that he had tried to have his way with her, this slave, capture him, capture him. And so Joseph is captured, and the Potiphar is like, I thought I could trust you, obviously I can't. And he throws Joseph into prison. And this looks like the end of Joseph. And again, if you're a Sagittarian or Pisces, you've done this before, okay? You've like, okay, that looks like it's the end of me, or bottomed out, or my luck has run out, and this is going to be it. Okay, people with strong Jupiter are not alien to this experience. But again, Jupiter finds a way for things to work out. Okay, it's a planet that is committed to that, especially to those born under its influence. And so Joseph is imprisoned, and he's got two cellmates. One is a cupbearer to the pharaoh, who's not doing so well. Pharaoh is throwing him into prison, probably out of a fit of pique or something like that. And another is a baker to the pharaoh, who isn't doing well. And so they had elevated positions, and they've been thrown. They've been thrown into jail because Pharaoh has tired of them, and they're obnoxious, or they got on Pharaoh's nerves, or something like that, because Pharaoh is the king of all of Egypt. And both of them are looking kind of melancholic when Joseph shows up. And Joseph's like, what's up? Like, why are you looking so sad or whatever? And they both say, I'm haunted by a dream. I am haunted by a dream. I dreamed that I dreamed. I dreamed a dream where something happened. And Joseph is like, well, that's really interesting. Why don't you tell me what your dream was? And so the cupbearer goes first. He's like, can I go first? And Joseph's like, sure. And Baker will listen to you too. And the baker's like, okay, good. No, that sounds good. So the cupbearer says, I dreamed a dream. I dreamed a dream where there was a vine with three tendrils. And this vine with three tendrils turned into grapes. And I took these grapes and I crushed them. I crushed them with my hand, and they turned into this extraordinary juice that filled up this cup that I turned and I handed to Pharaoh. He was suddenly there, and he took the cup from me. I don't know what it means. All I know is that I've offended him, and he wants nothing to do with me. And Joseph says to him, actually, I can interpret that for you. And the cupbearer is like, really? What's it mean? And Joseph says to him, what it means is that in 3 days, that's the 3 grapes, the Pharaoh will call to you, and you will be brought back to him, and he will forgive you for whatever it is that you had done, and that you will resume with your station. And he's like, do you really think so? I mean, he was so upset with me, and Joseph is like, no, you believe me. He is. You will be back in his good graces. I can promise you this. And the cupbearer is like, I hope you're right, because I love the Pharaoh. And so the baker, who's been patiently waiting, says, can I tell you my dream? And Joseph's like, sure, tell me your dream. And so the baker says, I dreamed a dream. I dreamed a dream that there were 3 open baskets that were on top of my head. And in the uppermost basket were all kinds of food, wonderful food that was meant for the Pharaoh. And I was striding towards the palace carrying these baskets. But then all of a sudden there were birds. There were birds that descended and began to eat from everything in the uppermost basket. And because it was so high up, I couldn't get to it. And the birds were eating, and they ate everything that was there. And I'm so disturbed by this. What could it mean? And Joseph said, well, I can interpret that dream for you. And the baker's like, sure, what? And Joseph says, well, there are 3 baskets. So that means there were 3 days. And the baker's like, mm-hmm. And he said, in 3 days, the Pharaoh will call for you. And the baker's like, mm-hmm. And Joseph said, well, in 3 days, the Pharaoh will call for you and he will chop off your head and he will place it on a stake, and birds will peck out your eyes and eat the flesh from it. Now, obviously, dream interpretation has come a long way since this time. We've learned to be a little bit more, perhaps, sensitive in our approach or the way that we put things. But what can I say? This is Genesis, and this is Joseph, and this is Joseph interpreting the dream. And we don't really spend much time with the baker afterwards, except to know that within 3 days, they are both released. And within 3 days, and after 3 days, they go to their separate and very different fates. It's the cupbearer who is restored to the court of Pharaoh, who knows that Pharaoh is troubled by dreams. Okay, he's been troubled by dreams for 2 years, and he's had his soothsayers come on in and try to interpret them, and none of the interpretations sound right. And Pharaoh dismisses them, and he scowls, and he's like, "You cannot help me with these things, you fake, phony soothsayers." Okay, and so the cupbearer says, I met in prison a master of dreams. And Pharaoh said, really? Who? And he's like, it's this boy, but he's extraordinary. I mean, with the way that he can just draw out what the dream is about, and not with all this sort of flowery language. He gets right to the point, and Pharaoh's like, bring him to me immediately. And so Joseph is taken from Pharaoh, and Joseph is taken from prison, and he's brought before Pharaoh, and he kneels in front of Pharaoh. And Pharaoh says, well, boy, I've been told that you are a dream master, that you can interpret dreams. I want you to interpret my dream. It has troubled me for 2 years. And Joseph says, sure, go ahead, tell me. And Pharaoh begins, nobody's been able to interpret dreams successfully. And Joseph's like, okay, no, I hear you. And so Pharaoh begins, I dreamed a dream. I dreamed a dream where I was standing by the Nile, and the Nile was beautiful. It was a beautiful time of day, and it was just moving along swimmingly through its course. And I dreamed this dream, and from out of the Nile came 7 fat cows, 7 fat, extraordinary, lovely cows. And so they came up from the Nile, and they were glorious to look at. Then I dreamed in my dream that they were followed by 7 foul cows. They were foul. They smelled foul. They were foul to look at. They were practically skeletal in their appearance. And not only that, they were monstrous. Boy, they were monstrous. Immediately, they fell upon the 7 fat cows and they devoured them. Can you imagine such a thing? A cow devouring a cow? They devoured them and looked greedily at me. And it has haunted me. It has haunted me ever since, for 2 years. And so Joseph said, I can interpret that dream for you. And Pharaoh said, interpret it. And Joseph said, there are 7 fat cows. There are 7 fat cows, and these represent 7 years, each year for a cow. And during these 7 years that these 7 fat cows represent, they represent a time of plenty, of grain, when you will have more than you need, when Egypt will enjoy a bumper crop of grain. And Pharaoh's like, oh, that sounds lovely. And Joseph said, but then we must remember the 7 foul cows that follow Pharaoh. And Pharaoh's like, yes, what's that mean? And he says, they would be followed by 7 foul cows. And it's not just followed, the cows eat the cows that came before them. And Pharaoh said, yes, it's a horrible thing to watch. I have to see it every night. These represent 7 years, these 7 cows, and they represent 7 years of famine. And not only will Egypt be laid bare by famine, but the cost of that famine will eat up everything that had been gained in the years of plenty, so that Egypt itself is rendered foul and famine struck. And so Pharaoh is like, what do we do? What do we do? What sacrifices do we make to the gods? What rituals do we perform to stave this off? Tell me. And Joseph said, what you do is that you collect the grain during your years of plenty. You collect the grain and you save it, so that when you go through your famine years, you will not be reduced. You will not be struck ill. You will have enough to get you through this time. After all, my Pharaoh, it is only 7 years. And Pharaoh is so moved by this 7 years of plenty, 7 years of famine. But, and this is what strikes Pharaoh, but it's not preordained. I can do something to remedy that situation. I can collect grain into silos, into storehouses, and I can save for that time. And therefore, I can save and preserve my people. And Joseph is like, yes, that's exactly what you can do. And so Pharaoh, in that moment, does something that no one has ever seen Pharaoh do. He takes off his ring and he says, boy, give me your hand. And Joseph extends his hand, and Pharaoh puts on Joseph's finger his ring. And he turns and he says, get this boy fine garments. And they appear with fine garments, greater robes than the robe that Joseph had originally worn, the ornamented tunic that his father had given him. And Pharaoh says, take this gold collar and wear it around your neck, because you are beloved to me. And so Pharaoh blesses Joseph. And from that time on, Joseph becomes the king, or not the king. Joseph is in charge of the storehouses of grain. Okay. And so, as Joseph predicted, there are 7 years of bumper crops and 7 years of starvation, but it doesn't affect Egypt because measures have been taken. And so it is at the age of 30. It is at the age of 30, and this is where our story comes full circle. It is at the age of 30 that Joseph's brothers, who lived in Canaan, come down to Egypt because they are starving. Okay, their flocks are dying, and they are in need. And so they come down to Egypt. They are not Egyptians. They come down to Egypt, and they ask the Egyptians to take them to the regent, to take them to the governor of the land, so that they can beg this governor for some kind of food, because they are dying. They are starving. And so the brothers, all but the youngest, Benjamin, the brothers are led to the regent who recognizes his brothers instantly. Okay. They do not recognize Joseph. Joseph is in full Egyptian fabulousness. Okay. Joseph is like wearing everything Egyptian fabulousness. Okay. And his brothers don't recognize him, but he recognizes his brothers. And what results from this interchange, and it's an extraordinary moment, and it's one that is so connected to Pisces. Is Joseph going to exact vengeance on his brothers who wanted to kill him and sold him into slavery? Or is Joseph going to show mercy? We don't know at this point in the story. I'm going to speed through. There are several motifs where Joseph tests his brothers, the fidelity of his brothers, where he gives them, as the regent, he plays a real, kind of cruel, almost cold type of person. He puts on this act. We see it in films all the time or whatever, where they're testing people. And he gives the brothers grain, and the brothers take the grain, but then he sends soldiers after the brothers, and they discover that there's silver in the grain, and he accuses them of thievery. So every time Joseph gives the brothers things, he also sneaks in silver or cups or rings or whatever and accuses them of thievery. And they're like, he basically torments them. But what he's doing is that he's testing them. Have they become better people since he knew them before? And the object of his test is really Benjamin, who's now the youngest. And he was the youngest when Joseph was still a boy. But, did they do to Benjamin what they did to him, and all these sorts of things? Anyway, the brothers are fumbling in the tests, but they're always coming back saying, why is this silver showing up in our wheat bags, and we don't mean to be crimes, and all we need to do, they become more so. And it's Benjamin who's finally brought in front of Joseph. And Benjamin has in his sack a silver cup, which is, and this shows the worst thing. And this is the greatest of all the thefts, Benjamin having this silver cup in his sack. And the reason Joseph sets this up like this is that he wants to see whether his brothers would have abandoned Benjamin to his fate, to a cruel justice, or whether his brothers would stick up for Benjamin. Have they grown? Have they changed in all this time? Joseph hasn't seen them in years. And the brothers come to Benjamin's defense. They protect Benjamin. They don't want anything bad to happen to Benjamin. And so Joseph's heart is moved. Joseph's heart is moved towards mercy and towards forgiveness. His brothers have become better people in the time that he has not seen them. And so he's like, do you have a father? Is he still alive? And they say, yes, he's a very old man. And they bring Jacob down into Egypt. And Jacob says, Governor, I'm an old man. I can hardly see. What is it you want from my family? Why do you pursue us like this? And Joseph says, I pursue you like this because I'm your son. And it's really one of the most beautiful moments. It's really one of the most beautiful moments in Genesis, where Jacob, who thought his son was dead, now sees his son transformed into this extraordinary figure, transformed by his dreams, his ability to interpret dreams, transformed by his wisdom, transformed by all the best that resided in Jacob's heart and in his soul. He is transformed into someone who is wise and who is merciful and who is forgiving. And you have to remember, it's gone on since Adam and Eve. The sibling rivalries, the disappointments to the father, not getting it right in terms of God's plan or whatever. And here at the end of the book of Genesis comes this beautiful reconciliation between father and son, between family, with nations. There's Israel and there is Egypt, and there is this beautiful reunion. There is this beautiful reconciliation against impossible odds, but can only be found through dreams, through the interpretation of dreams, and it's not just dreams, it's actions, it's people's behaviors, it's the tests. It can only be found by traveling that meandering course that Jupiter sets up, but that Jupiter sets up to make you a better person, okay? Not a more successful person, not a richer person, not, my ambition made me this or, whatever, but to make you a better person. Jupiter is the planet of paying it forward in astrology. Whatever good is done to you, you pay it forward to someone else. And that is how Jupiter extends the influence of his benevolence in this world. You don't do good to get a reward for it. You don't do good to get something back for it. You do good, it's recognized, and you pay it on forward. And here in the figure of Joseph, someone who had every reason to want to forswear his family, to imprison his family, to take vengeance, instead shows mercy. But it's not just from a bleeding heart. He tests his brothers. And Jupiter is as much a tester in astrology as Saturn. Saturn, we're always told, tests by withholding or placing trials or tribulations, things like that, within our path. Jupiter tests us through faith. Have we held our faith, or have we lost it? Do we believe, or did we turn our back on belief? And did we embrace being jaded or bitter or cynical? Jupiter holds out that belief, but belief means the most when times are darkest, when times are most difficult. That's when it means the most. It doesn't mean the most when you're a fat cow. It means the most when you're dealing with the 7 shriveled ones. That's when it is tested. And the beautiful thing about belief is that belief is like a fire. It's like a flame. Okay, you kindle it. Okay, you care for it and you kindle it. And if you do that, if you stoke that belief, the flame grows bigger. It grows larger. And so Jupiter is a planet that will always hold enshrined within its constellation. It will always hold that optimistic belief in humanity, and that humanity can find the means within itself to make the world a better place.
Wow, Christopher. I mean, first of all, in my entire life, 13 years of Catholic school, lots of Sunday Bible study classes, nobody has ever brought a story to life from the Bible like the way you just did. I mean, it was captivating, and I can feel every twist and turn in the plot, and actually feel these characters, which I've never been able to do from these stories. So first of all, thank you for that.
Thank you.
Wow. Oh my God. Second of all, what an incredible encapsulation of this opportunity right now for all of us. And would you say, one of the questions I had as you were speaking is, Jupiter protects the life that it's in charge of. And you went through some of the chart positions where Jupiter would be very present in your chart and in your life.
Yeah.
But would you say that because of this particular configuration right now, collectively, we have this opportunity to, I love this. Are we jaded? Are we cynical? Are we compassionate because we're just a bleeding heart? Or is there a wisdom in our compassion? Because that's what Joseph showed, is a wisdom in his compassion. He wasn't just going to compassionately let his brothers off the hook because he, felt bad for them or whatever, or because he could. He wanted to make sure that they were worthy of that gesture that he provided. And that, to me, is a wisdom that he learned through his life, and he demonstrated in that moment. And so it's like all these themes, and with so many, like you said, and I said this on our Jupiter panel event in my opening last week, is there is so much evidence right now to the contrary. There's so many reasons to doubt humanity, to think we're doomed, and to think that we will have no chance. But in this story, what it demonstrates is that against all odds, at the darkest moments, at the moment where you think there's no possible saving grace for Joseph, he continues to show up who he is. He never shriveled or shrank from his gifts. He continued to give his gifts, even though those gifts are the thing that landed him in prison and as a slave.
Right.
You would think he'd be like, maybe I shouldn't go around doing this dream thing.
I shouldn't say anything.
But he doesn't. He continues. Maybe I should just, keep that under wraps. But instead, he continues to show up who he is and shine his light. And in the end, that is the thing that saves him. So I just feel like the undertone messages for us are just like tenfold, 100-fold, a millionfold, that this is the time to show up in your heart,
Yeah.
to bring your gifts forward, to
Yeah.
have faith that those gifts and those dreams that you have are placed within you for a reason.
Yeah.
And that even though it doesn't look clear and you don't know how or where or why, that this is the time to really proceed forward in that faith.
Yeah. And there's another, I was struck listening to you just now. There's that I dreamed a dream. There's that first dream that he has where the chiefs bow to him. His stands up and the others bow to him, and it's the exact number of brothers. Or with the constellations, which is the exact number of brothers, bow to him. And it looks like he's cocky.
Right.
And he's just like going on about it. But the other thing, and this is something that we really learn through astrology, is our lives speaking to us through time. At that moment when it was a 12-year-old boy saying, and you're all bowing to me,
wow, look at that.
Like, what they call an asshat, like an obnoxious brat. But what happens is that he's glimpsing a time when they will bow to him, but it's because he's fulfilled who he is and the best in who he is. Something that he could never have comprehended at 12, but he can understand at 30. And this is one of the most beautiful gifts of astrology, is that it's not just, that's my dog barking, sorry.
What's your dog's name again?
Huh?
What's your dog's name again?
Juno.
Juno.
Named Juno after the Queen of Heaven.
Wow. Okay, perfect. Thank you, Juno, for
your Juno sense. But the thing is, what I love, and I wanted to, astrology speaks through us through time.
Yeah.
A prediction or forecast, right, isn't something like, did it come true or not? On this day there was supposed to. No, it's this, you're projecting into the future this arrangement of planets and this person that you are not yet, living in a world that you can't really understand. How much could we understand of our future lives at 12?
Right.
So he gets this vision at 12, which actually causes, he's sold into slavery, but it takes him on this meandering Pinocchio-like adventure, which is what Jupiter lives are like, so that at the end, they are bowing, but it's not out of arrogance or egotism or anything. They're bowing to acknowledge what this person has grown into, and it's not just, Joseph about Joseph, but someone who is a wise judge, an interpreter of dreams and of people, someone who, is benevolent. Okay. But that's not who he was at 12, but it is who he is when the what was interpreted of the dream comes to pass.
Oh, such an amazing point too, because I feel so many of us have ideas or ideals or dreams or visions or things that we always imagined our life to be when we were younger, or like things that we've glimpsed that are like, but how could that, I mean, like, how would I ever get from here to there? But it's trusting that dream or vision and knowing that life's going to take you on a meandering path, all of which leading to that culmination of that vision. But when you're ready to own it, when you're actually in that genuine place to be that thing that you saw or that vision that you had.
Right. When you've arrived.
Oh my gosh, Christopher, thank you. So beautiful and brilliant. How long are we in this energy? I mean, I know we have a whole week and there's probably some other transits you want to tell us about, but I know this is not only the biggest deal of this week, but pretty much one of the biggest deals of this year. arguably one of the bigger deals of our lifetime. So it's good that we're taking this time on it.
Yeah.
And we had a whole panel on it last week that anybody who's interested in viewing can still do so at astrologyhub.com/.
It's a wonderful panel, by the way.
Oh, you watched it.
Yes.
Yay.
Yes.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Astrologyhub.com/Jubilee.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Perfect name.
Like, what are we going to name this thing? Jubilee. Yes. Okay. Christopher, how long do you see us being in this energy?
We are in a sort of concentrated form of this energy, and I kind of like the image I brought up. It's almost like the collective dreaming is rolling over and it's sleep.
Yes. Oof.
Is really what this is about right now. And if you've slept next to someone and you watch them do that, you know that they're in a very special place, and they're asleep, and it's a gentle, beautiful moment. The thing is, it's not just exclusive to this week, and it's not even just exclusive to this time when we have a stellium traveling through Pisces. I dare say it's the stellium and this conjunction is really about planting the seeds. Remember that even though Neptune doesn't really perfect a sextile to Pluto per se, it's still within very close proximity to Pluto. So we actually have this throughout the rest of Pluto's tenure in Capricorn. So what you want to do is look for your water months and your earth months, the times of year that will mimic this sextile, to sort of access that in terms of your chart. It may not be as strong, powerful, and concentrated as it is right now, but sometimes when things are too concentrated, they're indigestible.
Yes.
They can be too much. We need them, filtered or something. We all have different abilities to digest, and so we're actually going to be enjoying this through the end of Pluto's sextile, Pluto's tenure in Capricorn. I think it's really lovely. Whoever plans all of this upstairs, I think it's really lovely that they planned it in such a way that, for instance, there's been all this talk of a Pluto return in America, and but that it's then followed by this really lovely Jupiter Neptune conjunction, and then extended sextile with Neptune in proximity to the Pluto. So I think that that's a really, really beautiful thing. They gave us a very nice way to emerge from that. That wasn't going to be too hard. I mean, we all see we all see what Ezekiel and Jeremiah would be going on about in the world right now, and we are encountering these prophet figures, and yes, we do need to listen to them. Okay. But how nice that we also have our collective dreaming,
Yes.
our way of being that's moving towards that dream of a better world. And it's moving in a place where it's not going to be shamed or made fun of or terrorized, that it's just moving gently through each of our lives, because we're all part of this gorgeous human chain, and we can, Pisces always makes me think of the school of fish going in one direction, and all it takes is one fish going in a different direction, and then the school will turn around and move in that different direction. This is one of the beautiful things about Pisces, and that doesn't have to just be done by people barking from pulpits. That can be done through our dreams and through the way that we interpret the dreams or read the writing on the wall in our own lives.
I mean, we can wrap it up right now, but I know you have a few other things to tell us about that. It's just perfect. And yes, it has felt like Jupiter's mercy or grace on all of us.
Yeah.
On all of us.
Mercy and grace, Amanda, those are gorgeous words. Those are perfect. Mercy and grace, those are perfect words.
Definitely feeling it, and also feeling that you have to have faith, and have to have faith that it's actually possible. Like you just said, with the fish going around in a circle, it's like just takes one fish and now they're in a whole different direction. It just takes Joseph saying, hey, look, we can like harvest that abundance and we can store it away for later. So then when that famine comes that we know is going to come, we have some stores of grain to feed everybody. Like there are ideas like that already exist about all the situations we're in right now.
Yeah.
And it's the people having those dreams or visions or ideas, giving voice to them, bringing them forward, saying, "Hey guys, like I dreamed a dream. There's a way out of this."
Right. I was used to that from, like I think a 70s song or something. I didn't know that it actually comes from the Bible. It
Wow.
repeats. I
Amazing.
dreamed. They always begin with "I dreamed a dream."
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
When you said water and earth months,
Hmm.
you said to look at the water and earth months and that you'll know when those are happening, that you'll kind of tune back into this energy again. Were
Hmm.
you talking about personal based on our cosmic calendar?
Yes, but I
Oh,
wasn't gonna do an underlying thing, but okay, I will now that you
yes.
say what you want to do in your cosmic calendar is that you want to look for when the sun is traveling through um, earth and water signs. Again, you have to apply, is it an earth or water sign that's opposite you, and sort of like that. But when it's traveling through an earth and a water sign, and when it's forming those trines or sextiles, it I mean, it's great if it's to your sun. And I taught cosmic calendar based on the sun. But for instance, you might have a clump of planets that have nothing to do with your sun that might be picking up that energy through a trine or a sextile.
Mm, mm,
It's Marsilio Ficino, um, who says that I'm paraphrasing, but he says that by getting to know your planets can follow your lead if you lead them.
whew.
Okay. Yeah. This is way before Jungian, before Jung and astrology become fused, like in the late 70s and 80s. It's Ficino who talks about actually teaching, like he talks this dual relationship, honoring the planet. You honor Saturn, you honor Mars. Okay. He makes a point of pointing them out because they're malefics. You honor the planet, but then you can teach the planet to go in the direction that you want it to go. This has become popular right now through like astrological magic and things like that. But Ficino does talk about, badges and colors and things like that. But what he was really talking about was a conversation with your horoscope in which
Mm,
you are leading the planet in the direction that you want it to go. If you honor the planet recognizes you, and then you can lead it in the direction that you would like it to go. It's what we would call harnessing an energy right
yeah.
now. And
Mhm,
so what you can do is that you can harness that energy when the sextile of Neptune and Pluto are being stimulated.
mm,
Okay, that could happen when the sun's traveling through those months, but I'm sure it has been gone over by other people in Astrology Hub. You can also harness it at times of month with the moon
mm,
doing that.
mhm,
So you want to take advantage of the sextile of the Neptune and Pluto, and then find ways to tie it into your chart. What's it aspecting, or what area is it aspecting? And then by honoring the planet, you can then direct the planet to where you want it to go.
mm. Okay, so if you're interested in more of what Christopher's speaking about and being able to time things like that based on your personal chart, and you haven't yet taken the cosmic calendar course that we did with Christopher, you can go to astrologyhub.com/cosmic calendar. It was a phenomenal, brilliant course that we just did recently with Christopher. So you can check that out and get in tune with your own rhythm based on your personal chart. And then work directly with these energies that we're in right now. If you like this, if you like being in this place where your dreams feel more palpable and tangible, where you feel more faith and hope that and optimism that they could actually manifest in this world
Yeah.
in this lifetime, then you could work with the rhythm of your chart for the next, I don't know, years, because Pluto's going to be in Capricorn for a few
Till
more years,
2020,
right?
2023 it leaves, and then it comes back in, and then it moves forward, and so go
I'm
another year.
tracking I'm tracking this very personally because it's right on my Venus and Sun. So
Oh
I'm
boy.
like,
Okay,
yeah, it's
so
right there. Yes. Yeah. Okay. And I'm doing what you said. I'm entering into relationship with Pluto, and then and I am not at the point yet where I feel where I can direct Pluto, but that's part of working with the astrology, which is exciting.
People who keep dream journals and work with their dreams know exactly what I'm talking about. You know, when they re-enter a dream at night and they re-enter a dream with an intention because
Mm-hmm.
they've become very familiar with the vocabulary of their dreams, and then the dreamscape or the dream characters can shift and change. Jung based a whole thing on, you know, this is when they begin to talk to you, or this is when they begin to assist or to guide you. The chart, and this was always the premise of Jungian astrology, what Liz Green was after, started by Dane Ridgway. The chart can work in that same way too, but it's what Joseph did. You have to recognize, you have to honor, you know, and then when you honor that force, recognize the Pharaoh recognizes you,
Mm.
you
Oh,
know.
God, is so
And then
good. Okay, Christopher, what else from this week? Anything else that we need to pay attention to astrologically?
anything else that we need to pay attention to astrologically? Well, I think we had some lovely sextiles. I'm a sextile fan. Okay, so I used to be one of those astrologers like sextiles are such a forgettable. Now it's just like all about sextiles. So we have lovely sextiles on the 12th and the 17th. There's a Sun Saturn sextile so that's very good at actually drawing on support in a situation where you didn't think you had it. And so that might indicate revisiting a situation or someone you thought had something against you because you might discover that you misunderstood or that they changed their mind. The reason for this, Saturn is in its own sign Aquarius and is forming a sextile to the sun, which is exalted, most celebrated in the zodiac sign of Aries. So in the spirit of the spring, this is a wonderful time. The sextile is going to aid and abet the beginning of any sort of projects, endeavors, and proposals or actions that you might have been like, is it going anywhere or whatever. This assist from Saturn in Aquarius may be going to a different person, or someone gets back to you, or the person's like, oh, I was always for this. I was just trying to, you know, see if you knew your stuff, or something like that. So sort of revisiting and then almost getting sort of a lift. It's kind of like finding yourself in a circumstance, you know, like Joseph in prison, like, you know, and then all of a sudden two people arriving, and, you know, and that begins the whole, that can be very similar to this Sun Saturn sextile. I love Mercury Venus sextiles. They're so newsy. Mercury Venus sextiles are like coffee with your best girlfriend. Okay, they're just sort of like, you know, it's where you catch up, you come up with all these different ideas, and you're just like, oh my God, you haven't talked to so and so, let's like see what they're doing, and you bring out your photos and like that. So Mercury Venus sextiles are always coffee with your BFF. Okay, and so it's a wonderful time to float ideas, socialize, catch up with people, because there's going to be a nugget of something that's there. We still have that Saturn Sun thing that's going on. So it's chatty, but chatty with a nugget of something that could go on to become something more. Okay, and so that's the lovely thing there. Two other things that I just very quickly wanted to identify is that Mars goes into Pisces. And so Mars in Pisces is a very curious place. It can be a bit of a frustrating place because Mars is so much about, you know, attack and gaining what it wants or whatever. And so when Mars is in Pisces, it's literally on slippery ground. You know, it doesn't really get a lot of traction, you know, so that can be, which I think is kind of good, because in everything that I just described with the Neptune and the Jupiter energy, this isn't a time of to-do lists. This isn't a time of setting up goals and saying, we're going to reach these, you know. This is a time of really almost going with the flow, or going with the undercurrent of events. So you don't really want to marshal out and basically shut out options and alternatives, which, you know, Pisces can be very much awash in options and alternatives. But the other thing that you want to beware of if you've got Mars and Pisces in your chart, or by transit or something, Mars and Pisces is what I call constant craving. Okay, just like the KD Lang song says. Okay, so it's constant craving. So Mars in Pisces has this problem where it's always craving or wanting something, and of course, once it gets it, it is like, it's as if it woke from a dream. It's like, what are you doing? Why am I'm hired for this job? Why? I don't, or I said I loved you last night. That's not the way I feel today. So there can be a morning after effect to a Mars and Pisces. So what I'd like to counsel for Mars and Pisces is, pursue something, crave something, or whatever. That's great. Don't make any promises beforehand, because you may find that when you get it, that it's as if you've woken from a dream and you're like, why am I here? Type of thing. So be careful of that. That's a problem.
And that's a few weeks, right? Like that starts this week, but that doesn't end this week.
Through to May 24th.
May 24th.
Through to
Okay.
May 24th. But let's see what it does when it falls under the beams of Jupiter and Neptune at different points.
Okay.
I don't want to get off into another tangent, but let's see what it does when Jupiter moves to Aries and Mars and Jupiter are in mutual reception. That's an early May. That's going to be a very different, that's a different link, click, and you go to here. Okay, so that's going to be a different picture there. And finally, we have a full moon in Libra, and we have a full moon in Libra that squares Pluto. Not exactly, but really close. And so what this could bring up is finding yourself in a situation where you have to make a judgment that is harsh, that is severe and that is tough. It's not going to be what I'm going to use as an example, but I'm going to use it as an example. I'm sure everyone was like, at that part where Joseph interprets the dream of the baker. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. The one who pulled a really,
who's going to get beheaded and then
right, exactly.
And all that. Yeah. No,
that is not going to happen with a full moon, square Pluto. That's not going to happen. But, if you've ever been an astrologer or if you've ever been an astrologer, yes, once. But if you're an astrologer, if you're a therapist, if you're a supervisor, if you're a counselor, if you're in a position where you are in charge of other people, maybe it's a one-on-one reading, maybe it's a family, maybe it's a corporation, that there are times in which something has to be said. Okay, or a decision has to be pronounced or a judgment exercised that's not pleasant, either for the person hearing it or for you, but it has to be done. It has to be done. Okay, and that's what you can get with a full moon in Libra and Pluto square. Remember, Libra is a sign of judgment. That's what the scales are about. It's not about like, oh, I'm going back and forth. It's how do I make perfect judgment? How do I make good judgment? Okay, this is the Libra challenge. And it's square Pluto. Remember, Pluto, like Jupiter, are named after two deities of judgment. Okay, so this square to me is very much about a judgment. You can look at the situation, for instance, that's going on in Ukraine. I mean, there are a lot of very big questions being asked and a lot of judgments that haven't been made before being made. I mean, there have been similar judgments made in the history of the world, but every time, and astrology teaches us, every time this plays out isn't a repeat. We can go back and reference and learn from that history, but it's not a repeat. So we're living in times in which the stakes are high, that's Pluto, and the judgments being made aren't necessarily kind or nice, and so that's what that can represent. I mean, I'm not going to put you in a political whatever landscape, but in your own life, you may be facing some of these judgments. You may be facing some of these decisions. You might be on the side of the judge who has to render, or you might be on the side of the plaintiff who's looking up and wondering what it's going to be, And so there's that quality too that I would assign to the appearance of the full moon in Libra and Pluto square.
Does it have any, is it a true judgment or is it just a harsh judgment that may or may not be accurate?
I would say it's a harsh judgment that is accurate.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would go with that.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you feel something like you need to cast a judgment, so to speak, but it feels really true to you, it needs to be said and it needs to be acted upon. And
Yeah.
it's probably you're probably tuning into something actual and true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's pick an example. Okay. Let's say that you're the head of a division, you know, and you have an employee who you know, let's stack it, who you know means well, who needs the money, is going through a very difficult time financially. Okay. Um, and maybe this has led to bad work performance and being late for work and things like that. And maybe you floated this employee
Mm,
uh, for a while. Maybe you had several discussions, you know, and maybe it really looks as if this isn't going to turn around,
mm,
you know, and no one else can let this employee go but you. Okay. No matter how much you dress yourself in the finery of your position, you know, or the responsibility or things like that, you can't help but think of what's going to happen to this person if this person is let go. But the person isn't doing their job. The person, because of circumstances and because it's not your, you know, company or whatever, this has to happen. And it's
mm,
not pleasant. That's
mm.
what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Things like that.
Okay. Well, so that's the full moon. And what's the date of the full moon?
That would be April 16th.
April 16th. Okay.
Okay. So I don't think I'm describing something to someone that they don't know.
Right. The situation, they probably know exactly what you're talking about
Right.
already.
And
Yeah.
this when the full moon would simply signal time's done, you know.
Now's the time.
Yeah.
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 Okay. Anything else that you would like us to be aware of for this week?
I I think that's a lot.
That's a lot. That is. So we have the Jupiter Neptune conjunction in Pisces on the 12th, which is tomorrow, Tuesday,
Yeah.
which is a very culminating moment. We have Mercury and Venus sex. Oh, we have Mercury and Venus sextile on the 17th.
Yeah.
We have someone else sextile on the 12th.
12th is the Sun Saturn sextile. Sun
Sun
is
Saturn sextile.
in Aries and Saturn is in its own sign Aquarius. Yeah.
Right. Okay. And then we have Mars moving into Pisces,
Mm-hmm.
creating some slippery ground.
Slippery
Yeah, go with the flow and undercurrent.
and
And then we
slippery
have,
slopes.
yep, slippery slopes ahead. Okay. And then we have full moon in Libra square Pluto on the 16th.
Yeah.
Okay. What a stacked week. I'm so happy that you are our astrologer this week. This has been just captivating. And I feel like
Oh,
there's so many nuggets of gold and many, many gifts that we can carry with us throughout not only this week, but the rest of the year, and then all the way through 2023, 2024. It feels very important to actually be very conscious and aware of the gifts that we're receiving right now
yeah.
so that we can carry them through any famine that could occur in our lives. And I mean that metaphorically.
Yeah.
But, it's like, okay, let's store the goods and the gifts from now so we have them as resources later.
Right.
Yeah,
So that they're not depleted.
right.
And Amanda, thank you from me, and thank you from all the astrologers who are just so welcome here at Astrology Hub, and you give us this platform and this opportunity to talk to this wonderful community, and just, you know, I can never thank you enough. And
Mm.
and I know I speak for myself and all of my fellow astrologers when I express such gratitude and thanks for you creating this for this community.
Mm.
It's a special gift that you give all of us.
Oh, thank you. Wow. That feels really good to hear. Thank you, Christopher. And I know part of Jupiter is gratitude and generosity as well. right?
Mhm.
Thank you for that very generous gratitude. I really appreciate it. I'm putting it right into my heart, storing it for times where I need it, times
Yep.
of famine, right? When I'm
Put it
questioning
in
myself.
that storehouse of grain, Amanda.
Yes, exactly. I got it. I got it. All right. And thanks to all of you for being here, for being a part of this community, for sharing all of your encouragement, your support, your enthusiasm for astrology, for the work that we're doing here at Astrology Hub, for our astrologers. They love coming here to this community because of you and because of the way that you make them feel. So thank you so much for just supporting all the work that is being done and happens all the time here at Astrology Hub and for astrologers. You know, they really dedicate their lives to this beautiful practice and craft and art and science, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
And we get to bask in the gifts of that. So thank you, Christopher, and all of you amazing astrologers out there. And those of you who are aspiring to become astrologers as well. Like this is what happens, you know, after however many years that Christopher has been studying, to be in this position and just to know it so well that you can add story and metaphor and all these things to it. That is just brilliant. So
And we're our gift is your stories, your horoscopes that we get to read, your stories that you get to tell and that we get to work with. It's such it's miracle gift. It's just such a special gift, and so we owe you all so very, very much.
Wow, beautiful. This all feels so Jupiter, Neptune in Pisces, just this moment alone. If you missed that panel last week, it's not too late for you to join us for the ceremony that we're doing tomorrow, which will be very much in honor of Jupiter. And so that can be, maybe if you haven't done that before, you can start to dabble with, okay, what does it mean to honor a planet? Like,
Yeah.
what does it mean to like show up in a devotional space and start to cultivate that direct relationship with the planet in my life? So we're going to be doing that tomorrow. And it's not too late to join. It's a give as you wish event. So you get to choose however much you want to gift in exchange for your ticket for the event. And you can go to astrologyhub.com/Jubilee. You'll get access to last week's panel recording. You can tune into that and get all the goodies you need, and then show up for that ceremony tomorrow on Tuesday the 12th. All right. Christopher, thank you again. Thanks all of you for being here. Thank you for making astrology a part of your life, and we'll catch you on the next episode. Take care, everybody.